Assalamualaikum and have a good day everyone. Today our group will do the presentation about the Singapore country. Before we start, let me introduce my team members. My name is Nurul Aisyah and the others are Nurul Aida Natasha, Noor Anis Umaira, Muhammad Shazwi and Amirul Ikmal Afif. Singapore's COVID-19 pandemic is caused by severe acute respiratory illness coronavirus 2. First case confirmed in Singapore on January 23, 2020. In February and March, local transmission began to develop. Now that nearly 92% of Singapore's population is completely vaccinated, the country wants to stop trying to track down every case and end every transmissions. Instead of paralyzing normal life, COVID-19 grew less dangerous like the flu. As many public health professionals predicted, it became endemic.
Hello, my name is Amirul Ikmal. Singapore has shown a remarkable economic growth in the past 10 years. Today, it is considered as one of the highest economic cities. The growth is driven by many factors like consumption and expenditure, international local demand, and investment. PESA is a tool that is implemented to analyze the macro-environmental factors of Singapore leading sector like petroleum industry. PESA analysis is an acronym for political, economy, social, technology, legal, and environmental factor. Now, let us see the PESA analysis of Singapore. First, political. The risk of political factor in Singapore is very low. According to a report by the Political Economic Risk Consultancy, Singapore has the lowest political risk in the country. Stability in the political environment has led to augmented business solution in the Singapore. Economy. Singapore consists of a vibrant free economic market. According to Asian, the country has the highest per capita income. The government is also investing in the market to diversify the economy of the country. Tourism and many others has flourished due to this. Cheap labor from the neighboring countries help the economy of Singapore to have saved a lot of costs. But there are some of constraints that also may be held by economic performance of the country. Those factors are shortage of labor and high cost of labor. Next, social. Singapore follow all the social traditions just like any Eastern country. Is follow traditional value. The younger generation is not following the Western value. The urge to do social well has resulted in increase in productivity. The business is seeing a rise in sales due to high purchasing power of the consumer. The people of Singapore hate the construction job due to the high literacy rate in the country. Trade and foreign investment also much thrive in Singapore. Technology. Investment of technology, easy communication and increasing connectivity is another factor for the economic enhancement of the country. Due to the technology time and cost of conducting business have reduced, the widespread operation of IT infrastructure has resulted in settlement of regional office of NC in Singapore. The government is also encouraged this electronic era. Next, legal. Singapore has employed some initiative for e-commerce business. There are cross-border policy and law also. Some of the law and regulation that are common in Singapore are intellectual property right, regulation of the content, procedure for import and export, electronic transaction act, tax issue and amendment to the Evidence Act. The last one is environment. In the urban area of Singapore, the pollution due to transportation is the main problem. Singapore was among those countries with the highest amount of emission of carbon dioxide. 30% of the mangrove of area of the country was diminished. There is also pollution due to the production of oil byproduct. As a result of this pollution, water is consumed after desalination and recycling. Due to the lack of water supply, Singapore is dependent to Malaysia for water. After analyzing all the above factors, we have concluded that Singapore have come up high in remarkable way. The government of Singapore has offered a great business opportunity for both international and domestic platforms.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nuraida Natasha binti Amarfia and today I will be explaining on the SWOT analysis on investment for Singapore before pandemic and also after the pandemic. one of the strengths of Singapore is the diversity of the economy. Singapore economy is built through various diverse range of industry such as the financial, energy, infrastructure, logistics, tourism sectors, and so much more. The diversity has created a huge economic opportunities for investors and has transferred Singapore to be one of the safest ecosystem of the world with various economic zones and designated industrial parks. As for the weakness of Singapore is the higher cost, but these need to be weighed up against Singapore's advantages. Despite the increased cost, many investors prefer to stay in developed countries due to many natural benefits that arise from it. As for the opportunity, Singapore provides an investment incentive for potential investors. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development World Investment Report, Singapore was the fifth largest recipient of foreign direct investment inflows in the world for the year of 2017 with 62 billion USD. And lastly, for the threat factor in Singapore before the pandemic is Singapore is vulnerable to the structural slowdown of the Chinese economy and US-China geopolitical tensions. As for after the pandemic, the strength of Singapore is that they maintain a heavily trade-dependent economy characterized by an open investment regime with some licensing restriction in the financial service, professional services and media sectors. The government was committed into maintaining a free market but also actively plans in terms of Singapore economic development. As for the opportunity, Singapore have introduced about 38 bilateral investment treaties that are currently in force during the pandemic. These agreements are mutually protects that national or companies of either economy against non-commercial risk of expropriation or nationalization. However, for the weakness, Singapore has closed its border due to the coronavirus. The severity of the COVID-19 pandemic in the home country could have a negative impact through reduce in investment capital. It may also induce outward on the foreign direct investment, and by this, it may affect on when investment in Singapore can be actualized. And as for the threats, Singapore is facing inflation to 4% in December 2021 from 3.8% in November, registering the highest inflation figures for almost a decade. Based on the analysis above, it shows that the pandemic do affect in terms of their investment. However, Singapore is quick in their response on how to solve the issue unlike other countries. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the government predominantly opened investment policies that support a free market economy just like before the pandemic occurs, while actively managing the sustaining in terms of Singapore economic development.
Next, I will present on SWOT analysis of the pandemic in Singapore. The strength is the rise in demand for workforce and supply chains as a result of lockdowns and border closings. Singapore is at risk for economic decline as a result of the pandemic. So now I will explain the SWOT analysis before pandemic in Singapore. Firstly, the strength, which is the acceptance of Singaporeans knows no bounds. Singaporeans encourage diversity within day-to-day life and the workplace. In 1965, when the country gained independence, the many different cohabitants of Singapore were forced to work together to develop the country. Since then, most citizens have been taught to live harmoniously regardless of race, or religion. Secondly, weaknesses. Falling exports of an export-focused country. Singapore's economy relies heavily on the exportation of goods to various countries, but especially to the United States. This breeds trouble. If the country in these countries were to suffer by proxy, so would Singapore's. In fact, Singapore would have a difficult time bouncing back until the other countries do. In the event of a global recession, traded items will be limited. Most consumers will be in tough spots financially and thus will focus on buying the basic necessities. If these are not products Singapore export, the country will suffer. Thirdly, opportunities. Singapore offers several job opportunities for international companies. Several key industries, including digital technologies, aviation, healthcare, and energy, are expanding. This may mean more products to export or opportunities for international business partnerships. And last is threats. The chance of radical terrorism and cyber security breach. Terrorism is a high threat in Singapore, but just a threat. The country has avoided attacks thanks to security agencies, the Ministry of Home Affairs, monitor citizens and foreigners on the lookout for potential terrorist propaganda. Even though many Singaporeans don't feel terrorism is an immediate threat, the MHA threat are rather be safe than sorry. For instance, 14 radicalized foreigners have been found since 2015, although no attacks were planned or carried out by these workers. The security agencies are staying on top of this to prevent devastation to the country.
Now let's move to the Singapore's government aids to firms and industry. My first point is open the border. Singapore was among the first countries in Asia to reopen its borders, initially allowing entry to fully vaccinated people from selected countries late last year without quarantine in a bid to help revive the country's aviation and tourism sectors. According to Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, Singapore is taking a major step forward to restore air connectivity to the world, to rebuild and reclaim Singapore's position as a premier air hub. Singapore will reopen its borders to all fully vaccinated travelers from the Ministry of Health's general travel category countries and will transition to a new vaccinated travel framework from 1 April 2022. Since September 2021, the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore has launched vaccinated travel lanes countries progressively in a cautious and step-by-step manner. The VTL has served as an effective pathfinder to help Singapore adjust and refine their protocols and to build public confidence in reopening their borders safely to vaccinated travelers. In the last 6 months, the VTL has helped many to reunite with family and friends abroad and in Singapore. This is an important step to Singapore reclaiming its status as a business hub in Asia. The second point is National Vaccination Program. The COVID-19 vaccination in Singapore is an ongoing immunization campaign against severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus in response to ongoing pandemic in the country. Singapore has a very high vaccination rate with more than 92% of its total population and more than 96% of its eligible populace having completed the vaccination regimen. The Singapore government invested more than 1 billion Singapore dollars to sign advance purchase agreements and made early down payments on promising vaccine candidates such as Pfizer, Moderna, CoronaVac, and Novavax. For me, I think it is the best action because getting vaccinated against COVID-19 can lower our risk of getting and spreading the virus that causes COVID-19. Vaccines also help reduce the risk of severe illnesses and death from COVID-19 infection among people who are fully vaccinated. The third point is support local product. The Singapore Food Agency (SFA) aims to raise awareness on food security issues by focusing on the Singapore food story. In doing so, SFA has launched a new local produce logo, which will be found on packaging and selected marketing collateral to promote local produce. The logo is expected to draw local support from consumers when they shop. Launch a brand new logo to support growing local is one of the key strategies in the SFA's approach toward making Singapore a food secure nation and helping local businesses expand their operation overseas and export food produced in Singapore. Last but not least is financial support. Because small businesses are a major contributor to Singapore's economic growth, the Singapore government has implemented a number of efforts to help small businesses stay afloat during this difficult period. Small enterprises in Singapore can take use of government subsidies, initiatives, and financial aid to help them overcome financial obstacles. The Singapore government offers some grants and financial support, which are first, COVID-19 recovery grant, second, small business recovery grant, third, working capital loan for SME in Singapore, fourth, temporary bridging loan program, fifth, enhanced rental waiver, sixth, providing booster packages, 7. Job support scheme, and lastly, property tax rebate for businesses.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a good day. I will be discussing on what can Singapore can do to improve the current states. One critical suggestion that could be given for Singapore is to grab global opportunities for digitalization to recover from the pandemic. Going digital is the most straightforward way to boost growth when the COVID-19 crisis hit the country. The rules for doing business in Singapore were changed drastically. Regional governments pushed for temporary lockdowns while promoting work-from-home arrangement. Businesses were forced to realize that there was no other time to improve their technological awareness than now. Companies have benefited as a business operating in Singapore from such a proactive push towards innovation and digital transformation by the government. In Singapore, the prolonged difficult economic impact of COVID-19, coupled with maturing conditions that have slowed growth even before the pandemic, had thankfully resulted in earlier government policy to restructure the economy. The challenge is transforming the economy to meet challenges of Industry 4.0 to digitalization to create higher value, higher paying jobs. It was unexpected that digitalization drive started in a few years before the pandemic because it enabled more businesses to work remotely and safely when firms had to make that overnight leap with the imposition of a circuit breaker. Companies that embraced digitalization were better prepared to source alternative revenue streams on e-commerce platforms, transform their business models to reduce operational costs, and reach out overseas remotely to explore new market opportunities and trade collaboration. 2in5, who implemented digitalization initiative in 2020, experienced stronger revenue growth than non-adopters. A study on small and medium enterprises, those who had digitalized their entire business or multiple areas reported stronger growth than those that went digital only in one area. In contrast, 6 in 10 that did not adopt any digitalization saw a decline in their 2022 revenues compared to a year before. There is a little wonder why, when digitalization can power trade-oriented Singapore SME search for new growth opportunities outside of our small domestic market and even reach consumers in Singapore. Irrespective of whether COVID-19 restrictions come down, Singapore can take its smart nation aspiration global by building on the strong foundation of its digitalization efforts so far. The task force said in its report, for enterprises, Singapore can build a virtual marketplace of goods and services to support the creation of new products and digital experiences, as well as participation in the trade of goods and services. For talent, the task force recommended using virtual training and workforce solutions to help Singapore companies tap global sources to better serve global demand from Singapore. This could also open up new opportunities for Singaporeans to work overseas. Singapore can also redefine its relevance as a safe and smart city for trade, business, work and leisure.